Great. Well, slightly different topic, this one. I'd just like to thank you for inviting me here. I've never been to such a happy conference, I have to say. So I think it's got something to do with starting the gin at 10:30 in the morning, so, which is pretty good even by my standards. So I'm David Poole. I'm co-founder of a little startup called Smarter.AI. So we are looking at techniques and ways for smaller companies with fairly limited data to do quite interesting things with data science and artificial intelligence. My background, I'm a mathematician, computer scientist by trade. I've been working with the machine learning research group at Oxford University, so this is within information engineering, engineering science, and spent some time at Helsinki University as well on some quite interesting techniques which we'll talk about. So I'm not going to talk about gin specifically, but I'm just going to talk about what's possible using AI and machine learning. How you can help this to generate better revenue and customer understanding, control complex things, do interesting things with machine learning and technology. I think probably the first thing to say really is just, data has completely changed the world, and this prevalence of real world, gappy, messy data that exists everywhere. We've all got mobile phones spinning off huge amounts of data. Systems generate data at incredible scale. And just to bring this into context, if you look at the world's 20 biggest companies from about 25, 30 years ago, and you look at them now, there isn't a single company left in the world's biggest 20 companies that was there in 1989. So they're all completely different. And of the top 10 companies, the top most valuable companies, 70% of those companies are data companies. People like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, which is obviously the parent company of Google, things like that. So totally changed the world. And also our relationship with knowledge is changing because of all of this data. And if you listen to Jan LeCun, who's the director of AI research for Facebook, obviously now Meta, he's a professor, his day job is he's a professor of AI at one of the big US universities. And he says, look, most of the knowledge in the world in the future is going to be extracted by machines, and it will reside within machines. There's just too much data. If you look at this graph from the bottom here, you've got massive amounts more compute power now, you've got loads more data in the world. The thing that isn't increasing is that little green line at the bottom. Our poor old human brains are lagging behind by about 2,000 years. We simply cannot make sense of this modern world. The only way we can do it is by using machine learning, artificial intelligence, and mathematical techniques to understand, organize, marshal, give us predictions on data. So this is really the world we live in. So the human decisions will be supported by data scientists and AI. They'll be the starting ground for all of this. So why is there just so much interest in AI and machine learning, and why is it so important? Why are people talking about it? It's really because it's a great way of reducing business uncertainty and quantifying risk. That's what it's all about. And if you want the term for this, it's really about entropy. Entropy is how we measure uncertainty and ignorance in things, okay? So we all live in this world of total uncertainty, pricing, supply chains, distribution, customers. Are customers going to leave my brand if I do this? What if I don't do anything? What if I make this radical change? Businesses, they are one of the most uncertain environments on the planet. Anything that we can do to use data to create certainty is really valuable and important. The more complex your business, the bigger it is, the more data you have, the faster it will become chaotic and uncertain if you don't do anything about it. So machine learning and AI, they are the ways that we reduce this entropy and we stop things descending into chaos. Okay. And so really, this is all about leading to information gain. This is why this is so important. This is why, if you look at this is a great graph from Bloomberg. So they looked at all of the earnings calls from big companies when they were talking to their investors. What are the things that they talk about? The thing they all talk about is AI and machine learning. This is what they talk about to their investors. Of course we're an AI company. Of course we're deploying machine learning. Oh yeah, we really understand our data. What they're saying is, we understand that we can't let our business descend into chaos because we've got so much data now and things are so uncertain. So we are going to use AI and machine learning. Now it doesn't help, all of this spin around AI and machine learning and all this hype has been generated. If you think about Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, he stood up at a conference I was at fairly recently and said, AI is a bigger deal than electricity and fire. So perhaps he'd been at the gin that morning a little bit, but certainly, what he's saying is, it's going to be like computing. Nobody says, I'm a computer-driven company, and in future, nobody will say, I'm a machine learning-driven company. It will just happen. Just happen by a process of normality. And the reality is, even right now, algorithms are absolutely everywhere. If you have a pair of noise-cancelling headphones, which I guess a lot of people in this room do, they have an algorithm in it called the Fourier transform algorithm. All that does, it takes the sine wave of the sound and it simply inverts it, and it silences that sound wave. And it's everywhere, but that's the core of how these headphones work, just a simple algorithm. If you use Siri or Google Home or any of these kind of, voice-activated devices, the voice that you get back is not a recording of a person. It's what you call an LSTM. It's a long short-term memory AI model that is talking back to you, and it's processing your data and constructing that voice in real time. It's quite incredible how these things have developed. And even now, we heard somebody that is a big car lover, a prestige car lover in the audience there. So we did some work fairly recently with Bentley. Bentley was saying, the car market's changing drastically. How can we redefine comfort in a car like a Bentley? And so they're looking at how they can use what you call a deep network to redefine comfort in the vehicle. So, and this is based on, there are certain smells and, tones and pitches and ambient air temperatures and colors that they can construct in the vehicle using an artificial intelligence network, a deep network, to taking inputs and outputs to let you, feel comfortable in that vehicle. It's quite incredible where these things are being deployed now. So basically, I won't go into huge amounts of technology, but really, for interest, there's basically three types of AI and machine learning. And they all rely on data. You just basically feed data in. The first thing is the classic, this classic thing about, is this a cat, is this a dog? Google's famous algorithm. So basically, you feed in millions of images of cats or dogs, and you say, this is a cat, this is a dog. So that the next time you feed it an image that it hasn't seen before, it's able to categorize it quite successfully, maybe with 85, 90% success, that, this new image I haven't seen before is a cat or a dog. But the real applications of this are not classifying cats and dogs. It's about, is this X-ray showing me something that's harmful? Is this a particular disease? We were talking about the use of it in radiology for predicting things like heart disease and stuff like this. So these models are being deployed everywhere right now, and also in commercial world as well. So the second thing is, I think, called unsupervised learning. So we don't train the model. We don't feed it lots of stuff and tell it what it is. We just feed lots of data in, and we let the model itself understand what's happening. So if you use LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, and suddenly on LinkedIn it says, we recommend you connect to this person, you think, bloody hell, how did it know about this person from 30 years ago? It's actually an unsupervised model that is doing that. So unsupervised models are great. If you want to think about, once you've got some data and you want to think, I wonder if I can build my customers into clusters of customers doing similar things. That's where you would use an unsupervised learning model. So can I create, categories and clusters and segments of customers that do different things? That's the kind of model that you would use. I'll talk about this, a practical example later. Reinforcement learning, this is what people really talk about. So these are the kind of rock star models of, playing chess, playing a game called Go, which is a very complicated game that a company called DeepMind beat the world champion at, and driverless cars and things like this. They all use reinforcement learning, and these are models, you can't feed it lots of data because you can't tell it what every road in the world looks like. So you have to use reinforcement techniques. It's a bit like how the human brain works, okay? So you reward it for doing certain things that are positive, and you don't reward it for doing things that are negative. And over time, it learns to do interesting things. And I was quite interested to see that already, if you think about a deep network or a neural network, they kind of mirror what's happening in the brain. It's trying to use skills and data to apply that to a model to do things that humans can do. And just doing a little bit of research for this, I was quite amazed that somebody's actually trying to create an AI-generated gin. I'm sure you know more about this than I do. It's a company in Bristol, and they produce this thing called Monca's Gargle. Is everyone familiar with this? Is it a well-known thing in the industry? But it was produced basically by a convolutional neural network, and a network that they gave a name to called Jeanette. And even the name of it, Monka's Gargle, was produced by a model called GPT-2. And that's from a company in America called OpenAI. And it was basically 1.8 billion parameters, 1.8 billion words. And they fed some knowledge into that, saying, we want a really, interesting, unique name for a gin. And it basically came up with this name by itself, so there was no human input to this. But it'd be interesting, they've just launched a newer version of that model called GPT-3, funnily enough, and that's got not 1.8 billion, but 17 billion parameters. So it'd be interesting to see if it came up with a different name using that algorithm. But people are doing this already to create deep learning generated products. The other thing that we can do in this sector is things like controlling the distilling process. So, energy costs are increasing significantly, the amount of inputs and outputs that you get from a still or a manufacturing process like this. So we can use a thing called a reinforcement network to basically understand that and to try and make this thing more stable. So you undershoot and you overshoot in terms of energy requirements and costs and things, and you want to avoid this oscillation and smooth out all of this oscillation process. And you can do that with a thing called a reinforcement learning model. And this is really important so this came from some work I did in Finland and Sweden with a big biodiesel refinery. So this was looking at, it's the world's biggest biodiesel refinery, and they had all sorts of problems with, industrial control and undershooting and overshooting and things, because it was a new process. And then we revised that and we use it in things like pulp and paper mills, which I had no idea the scale of these things up in Finland and Sweden. But the energy costs and the amount of energy that they can now return, and cleaned energy and clean water into the system, is absolutely amazing. And then we fed a lot of that energy back into a thing called the district heating network, so it goes to heating businesses and homes, and it's had a huge effect on their energy costs. So it's all entirely possible. The third thing is really looking at kind of improving sales and marketing. So you probably all have a transactional website, most people in here with a brand that you're selling online. And so we did some work fairly recently with a company called Direct Wines, or Laithwaites, and based over in Thiel near Reading. And we got talking to them, and they said, we've just had the most amazing lockdown period. So most of their revenue comes from wine plans. So they get these monthly wine plans, so people paying them every month for boxes and cases of wine and things. And they said that basically every month for nearly 2 years was like December. So December is with their big hockey stick, and then January, February it goes down. And that happened in 2020, 2019, it was up, and then it declined, and then March 2020, up it went again, and it's just remained at that increased level. And they're saying, we've got so much more data, we've got new customers, how can we get our pricing models right? How can we personalize offers for these customers? And you can do it now using these techniques on very small amounts of data with limited numbers of consumers. So, recommendation systems. So people are looking at, people like Netflix. So Netflix have 2,000 customer segments, or personas as they call them. And you'll fit in, if you're a Netflix user, you'll fit into one of these 2,000 user personas or clusters. And everything that you do on the Netflix site, all the recommendations, because you watch this, you like this, is all driven by which segment that you're in. Even the little thumbnail that they provide and they serve up is personalized to you and your segment. So people are now using these things to personalize even on small websites, transactional websites. How can we help predict churn? Which customers do I think are going to churn? Pricing optimization, things that the big tech companies, Amazon changed their pricing model on 20 million products 3 times an hour. The guys at Uber changed their pricing model 10 times an hour. They do it based on data and data feeds and information, but you can start to use some of these techniques now on smaller websites. Sentiment, what are people saying about my brand? Customer returns, big issue for the fashion industry, running at about 40% for some segments. They really need to understand this because it's a cost to the business. So if you're using things like Shopify, for the e-commerce platform, or Magento, Google Analytics, maybe MailChimp for running email campaigns, Klaviyo for behavioral information. All this is just spinning off this beautiful data, really structured data that you can combine, run against the machine learning model very simply, and start to get insight about your business and what people are doing. And just an example of this. This is a project we ran on with a client. So you've got the bit on the left there, which is kind of order information, what orders, the things that people are buying. Then you've got some unique customer information about them and where they sit and their general details and postcodes and things. And then this was an email campaign, so how many emails were sent and what you could opt in and what you could send people. And that led to this ability for them to segment their data. So they looked at engagement, how people are engaging with them as a company, whether people are purchasing or not, or whether they just browse and don't do anything else. And then some marketing data, like we're showing this Shopify and Klaviyo type data thing. So basically what they found was that, frequency of purchase, most people haven't purchased on their site. About 12% of their customers had placed 5 or more orders. So that led to this, never purchased, inactive, single, multi-low, multi-high, that kind of activity. We also looked at when people purchased, the recency. So, basically, I won't go into all the details, but basically, customers got 3.8% chance of reordering 5 months after a purchase. So what this is telling you is you just need to keep people engaged. That was the real takeaway from this. So they ended up with these segments. They had active customers, and of those active customers, there are people that have just bought once or they're buying multiple times from you. Lapsed customers, this is really important because they used to buy a lot from you and now they don't. Inactive customers, so they're just kind of languishing, in your database somewhere, and marketing teams just keep marketing to them and nothing seems to happen. So what can we do there? And then these new starters, new customers that you've not seen before. And so that each of these groups has a name, and there's different levels of marketing activity and things that you need to do to keep those customers engaged, and just basically to get them up to a more valuable customer level. And so their most valuable customer, it's all about retention. You've got to keep these people because these are the people that pay the bills, basically, and make your profit. So what can we do with them? Surprise and delight, these kinds of campaigns. And there's just different things and different strategies, but they're very simple to do and to repeat, once you start to understand your data. And I just want to talk about a big company here, because there's a tendency to think that, smaller companies, smaller brands, new to this, how can we possibly do things differently than a bigger company which must have all of the answers and is doing things beautifully? So this is a project I ran a while ago with Boots. And Boots said, we're going to put most of our marketing spend now into online. And we've got all this lovely data, so it's going to be a really simple process. But when they did this, it was really ineffective. And they said, we've just got no idea what's happening. And basically, when I spoke to them, I said, well, how are you doing this? What are your customer segments? And they said, we've got 3 customer segments. So if you think of Boots the Chemist, BTC, they had Betty, Tina, and Charlotte. And Betty was the sort of older lady, over-the-counter products, healthcare-based sales. Tina's the young mum, young girl, beauty products, perfumes, gifts, that kind of thing. And Charlotte's the young mum, so, lots of family healthcare and childcare products and that kind of thing. And what they'd done, all of this was driven through a thing called the Advantage card. And they've got like 15 million Advantage cards out there, and that's where they were getting all of their data from. But basically, 92% of all of the users of Advantage cards were female. So this was horribly wrong, because there were lots of guys using the website. So when you analyse the data and you say, what do people want to do on the Boots site other than just buy products? Basically, they wanted a health hub. They wanted to go somewhere that would understand them as an individual, and that there was kind of men's health and women's health and general health and prescription. So you could do much more than just selling products. And that has been incredibly successful for Boots as an organisation. I know it's a bigger company, it's hard to sort of rationalise that to a smaller brand, but basically what's happening generally is things like this. So consumers are really increasingly socially conscious. So you really have to align your strategies and what you do as a brand around this. And you can't see this, I don't know if you can see that, but this is a company called Bizarre Voice, and they did some recent research that says, are you willing to pay more for an eco-friendly, sustainable or green product? And basically 3/4 of consumers will switch brands to a more environmentally sustainable brand. They will do it, and they are doing it. And would you buy a product from a new brand that claims to be sustainable or remain loyal to a previous brand? No, I'd switch. It's real data. It's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. You need to start conversations with consumers and really nurture them. Don't just post something. We've launched this new product. We've done this. Because it won't work. You have to start conversations and nurture those conversations. Build what you call snackable content, with regular engagement. People have got no real ability to consume huge amounts of, complex, difficult marketing material anymore. It's all snackable. You're kind of fighting for attention. I think we heard earlier about a campaign that one site ran with, was it 6,000 gin brands on it? I mean, how do you get attention from somebody when that's happening? You have to do it through feeding snackable content, starting conversations. Users love community membership and belonging, so you've got to make them feel that they are part of a community in some way through your brand. Stay current on top of trends, which we've mentioned just here. This is one of the biggest trends here, but consumers are not stupid. If you greenwash, and like the oil companies are trying to do, then they'll see straight through it. You have to be true to your brand. And really just manage the funnel properly, get some exposure, some discovery, start conversations, work out how to retain customers using data effectively. And I think this is quite interesting. So the last couple of slides really. So early deep learning techniques, which are we were speaking about these models earlier, they were really dreadful. And people don't quite know how dreadful they were when they first became applied in industry. So this is something when Google and Tesla, was it Tesla? No, sorry, Google and Uber started testing their driverless cars on the roads of California. They had a real problem, and it was this. So the slide on the left there, 2016, this was in the US Supreme Court. Basically, somebody had stuck 4 bits of gaffer tape on a stop sign. So this is a bright red sign saying stop in big letters, and it's even a different size to the one on the left. But basically, the model that they were using in their driverless car misread that stop sign because of 4 bits of gaffer tape as a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. So these cars were accelerating through a stop street at 45 miles an hour. It's a real case. It's crazy. But we've gone on from there, and these models are much more refined, where they can do things like this on the left. So, basically, even I struggle with this. Is it a Dalmatian dog, or is it an ice cream? But the most advanced models are now able to work this out. This is where we've come in the past 8 years. But I think there's, how many are the total? 4, 8, 12, 6. I think there's 8 and 8, so I'll leave it to you to decide. So. And then the final thing really is that just because there is a correlation between data, just because you've done something and customers have done something else, doesn't necessarily mean that there is causality. It doesn't mean that one thing caused the other thing to happen. And if anybody's kind of a bit data nerdy, there is a great website called spuriouscorrelations.com, and it basically looks at stupidly ridiculous correlations between data. So this is like the number of worldwide commercial space launches and the number of sociology PhDs, doctorates awarded. And there's this ridiculous, it is absolutely beautiful. If you saw this in a model that you'd really worked on, you'd think this was fantastic. And then here, look, it's even stronger. Look at this. So this is the age of Miss America and murders by steam, hot vapors, and hot objects. It's insane, but it's real. So what you have to do, just because you see, I've done this and this happened, you need this kind of human in the loop. You need to be able to interpret, did this happen for this reason? And I love all of this. And then the final thing really is, consumers these days are really empowered. They have so much power through social media. They can make and destroy. They can, things happen, and they can very quickly get beyond your control. And this is an example of a few years ago, and it really highlights the problem. So this is a company called Kryptonite, and Kryptonite made a bike lock. And they launched the world's most expensive bike. It was like $250 for this lock. And they said it had a titanium, bar, and it had an 8-barrel lever lock and all the rest of it. So this guy up in the top right there, he bought one of these locks. And he was just playing around. And those old Bic biros where the pen top has that little plastic bit at the end? So he poked it in the barrel of the lock, and the lock opened. And he phoned or emailed the company, saying, look, you've got a real problem with this. this super secure lock, I've just opened it with a pen top. And they, instead of saying, oh, God, I'm really sorry, you need to understand, can you send it to us or we'll compete? Instead of managing it, they said, it's not possible. This is the world's safest bike lock. And he said, okay. So he made a video with a little stopwatch, video by his friend, where he did this. And he opened it in something like 30 seconds with this pen top, and he posted it on YouTube. Of course, it went viral. Then there were competitions amongst people to see the most stupid object that they could open this lock with. And somebody said, yeah, well, you've done it 30 seconds with a pen top. I did it in 18 seconds with a paper clip. And it just became ridiculous. And then Wired magazine picked it up and they ran it on the website and the magazine. Basically, the short of it is it just destroyed that product, that brand, that business. Instead of taking it seriously and handling it, and we were talking earlier about, I think it was you mentioned about, be honest and truthful with customers. You have to do it because you will be found out. And I just think it's a really good example, a sort of salutary tale of just making sure that you manage your brands effectively. So thank you for listening. If anybody's interested, just send me an email if I can help, if we can help as a company, if you're just curious about what's possible, I'd love to talk to you. So thank you very much. Thank you.